It is the 18th of October 2024 and as foretold in prophecy, two men have arrived in Port Colborne, Ontario. The pair of amateur paranormal investigators had up to this point limited themselves to publicly accessible spaces and historical landmarks during normal business hours.
Hold up. Sorry, everyone. It's me. Look, I will take it from here. Now, everybody knows, and I mean everybody, is aware that ghosts, they like to wait until it gets dark to start moving around, and tend to stick to privately owned properties, which are notoriously not open at night, except around Halloween and, well, for money. Today, we're going to have a short look back at when Rico and I joined a tour of Roselawn Manor, hosted by the Paranormal and Historical Association of Niagara. My name is Ben, and welcome to I Thought the Lore. Now, the first thing we have to do is take a little step back in time with help from the good folks over at friendsofroselawncenter.org, where I was able to pull up some history on Roselawn Manor. And it all starts with Levi Cornwall, born in Port Colborne in 1806 to English immigrant parents. The Cornwall family would leave Port Colborne in 1818 when he was a boy, but Levi would later return as a man. Levi would build the original two-story home in 1860, where he would farm the land with his wife Sarah Hoover.
Ghost, could you tell us your name? Come on, give us your name. I'm Rico, that's Ben.
Oh, there we go. All right, ghost tube is going.
Sarah.
What?
Did the ghost just tell us her name? Don't step in that mud.
Oh, yep, Sarah. And raised their kids, Hiram, Elizabeth, Anne, and Jane, until 1870, when they would pack up and move out to Chatham, Kent Municipality, where they would rejoin his parents, who had settled in the town of Howard, those many years prior. The property and surrounding acreage were sold to Lewis Green Carter and Mary Fielden Schofield Carter in 1870. Lewis Carter, a native of Brighton near Rochester in New York State, was born in 1828. That rhymes, so you know it's true. His Baptist parents, Levi and Hannah Green Carter, relocated to Port Colborne in 1838, where, by the 1860s, Lewis was thriving, having served as Justice of the Peace, postmaster, owner of a general store, and financed multiple Baptist churches in the area. When the Carters moved into the former Cornwall homestead, it was named Roselawn, for Mary's favorite flower, and was renovated as the Italianate three-story manor we see today. Now, word around the campfire is that the architect was the same John Latshaw who built Ruthven Manor in Cayuga. Fun tidbit here is that Ruthven is also a location with a reputation for spiritual activity that Rico and I have on our investigation bucket list, so stay tuned. While Lewis and Mary had no children of their own, his 10 siblings meant a metric shed-load of nieces and nephews for them to enjoy. Lewis passed away in 1896, and in 1902, it was one of those previously mentioned nephews, one Charles E. Steele, and his wife, Alice Amaretto Zavitz Steele, who took over Roselawn, where they would raise their own kids, Clara, Mervyn, Forrest, Mary, Lewis, and Doris. Now, Doris was the youngest, born in 1904, the same year that Mary also passed away. Charles, like his uncle, also spent time as a public servant, active in the town's activities, and even served as the mayor of Port Colborne, and, like his uncle, oversaw a two-story addition, replacing the kitchen and adding a second-floor bath. Later in 1930, the sunroom and expanded bedrooms were added to the west side. Charles would die in 1947, and Alice in 1948. After Alice's death, the family kept the home and rented it to the Lincoln Regiment until 1959, when it was sold to become the Port Colborne Club. Members of the club added a curling rink at some point, which was transformed in 1994 into a theater and became the home of the Showboat Festival today. At this point, you're probably thinking, okay, the house is over 100 years old and at least 4 of the owners died peacefully in the home at different points. People die in houses all the time, and it has to be said here, so going to say it, old does not mean haunted. Unlike a lot of these older structures, there are no rumors of any murders or suicides or spooky rituals, no demons, no poltergeists, no vengeful spirits or the devil. So who or what is said to still be moving around in this house that saw nothing but multiple generations of good old-fashioned, old-timey, sepia-toned family life?
I think you have to turn off the recorder and just start clicking that photo button.
Son of a bitch.
Funny.
Ah, yes. Yes, I am. Kind of funny, but you still didn't answer our questions.
Don't change the subject.
Yeah. I mean, yes, I do have that dry wit and that very dry sense of humor. Some people do find that funny. Thank you for finding that funny. I am constantly trying to perform and nobody laughs, including Ben, but, you know, maybe that's just because he doesn't get it. I'm light years ahead of my time.
Kind of an asshole, too.
Well, I'm kind of an asshole as well.
Ghost, are you an asshole?
Correct.
All right. We're getting somewhere. Having a conversation now.
To answer this, we looked to an article that popped up on the NiagaraThisWeek.com website way back in October 2007 about Roselawn and one employee in particular. Meet Sue Patterson, Executive Director of Showboat Festival Theatre since 2000, the time of writing. But whether or not she's still there now, 18 years later, is very much citation needed. Sue, if you're out there, drop us a line. For the purposes of our story, Sue is the token skeptic here, who, and I quote, never believed in ghost stories or hauntings until she started working at Roselawn Center. Now there were noises, sure, but she chalked them up to the creaks and moans of any structure built in 1860. She was not quite sure if her eyes were playing tricks whenever there were shadowy figures moving about. And then her keys went mysteriously missing, never to be seen again. Allegedly, there are 4 ghosts lingering in the darkened hallways of Roselawn. An elderly Levi Cornwall, a woman believed to be Mrs. Carter, a caretaker often sensed in the basement, and another former employee swears she heard a baby crying, perhaps the voice of a young, unidentified child, often spotted by paranormal investigators, believed to have died on the grounds as the result of a head injury sustained falling out of a tree.
The
Shitting
next
himself.
thing you say is not your name. Sorry, I'm
Buttocks.
gonna turn off the ghost. What did it say?
It sounded like it said buttocks.
Buttocks. Yes, I've been working out. Thank you.
Yeah.
It said buttocks. Nice.
Probably my favorite part of this article has to be the introduction of someone, and I shit you not, named Claire Voyant. Claire, if you're out there, chime in. So, Claire, she takes a tour of the haunted mansion and claims that she could see Patterson's keys on the other side, able to describe them down to the logo on the keychain. I have to take a minute here to acknowledge that this is the 3rd instance we've come across now of a real-world inanimate object being brought over to, quote, the other side for reasons. We talked earlier about the rope that William Black hung himself with on the grounds of the Ancaster Hermitage.
Now I got to ask, we've had other stories where people have died and carried things with them into the afterlife. This guy carries his rope. I guess it's now a ghost rope.
A lot of people have probably heard references to the infamous Bathsheba Sherman and her sewing needle. And of course, now you have this set of keys. Though granted, in this instance, their owner is still alive. With that, the stage was set for October 2024, where Rico and I come in. As was so Britishly explained in the beginning, this was our first visit somewhere at night, and our first quote-unquote interior space or former private residence. In typical IFTL fashion, while we were able to add a handful of new gadgets to our arsenal since that first day in and around Hamilton and Guelph, even with a spirit box, wireless mics, and an IR video camera, we also didn't really bother to get very familiar with any of it beforehand, and as expected, hilarity ensues. What we ended up with was several minutes of silent video because the microphone wasn't turned on, and several minutes of recorded spirit box white noise with no reference, questions, reactions, or context to what is happening during the recording. It wasn't all bad though. The lack of recorded audio is also why you're listening to my dulcet tones now. And the experience was very cool overall, with many lessons definitely learned. In fact, it was some of those same lessons we put into practice when we returned in March of 2025 to get the shots of Roselawn's exterior that we didn't think to get on our first visit.
This is Rico Suites from the Mean Streets. The mean streets of Port Colborne this fine March afternoon where it's slightly chilly and I'm in my Canadian tux.
Yes,
Trying to see if we can capture ghosts.
it is March, not October at all, like the last time we were here.
Yes.
Continuity, baby.
And I sprinkled in some of the more interesting ghost tube interactions we had as a result. About a week prior to our tour, we took a drive out to Port Colborne for some lunch and to do a little scout ahead. You know, making sure we knew where the house was and made sure we knew where to park, all that sort of stuff. Now, even as we were parked on the street outside, Rico decides he's going to snap a couple of random pictures, and upon review afterwards, we did notice a shape in one of the upstairs windows. On the evening of the tour proper, festivities started out with the Paranormal and Historical Association of Niagara welcoming us and introducing themselves. Just like you, we were given a brief history of Roselawn and the people who called it home before receiving a brief introduction to the equipment they had available and being divided into two groups. I actually thought things would take a little longer to begin and was left clumsily trying to get the spirit box and my headphones and my phone out to record audio, all while navigating a dark hallway and listening to our guide. So far, so I fought the lore. In the pitch blackness of Roselawn's cellar, Rico and some other members of the group had EMF detectors going while our guides asked any spirits present to interact with them or answer questions via the Ghost Tube app they had installed on their phones. Between the barrage of questions, the incessant background chatter of the other people in the group, and my trying to listen to the spirit box I had going while trying to keep the random earbuds I found in a drawer from constantly falling out of my ears, it's also here that we come to a piece of evidence? ? I'm actually hesitant to call this evidence of anything more than just a very subtle, albeit very anomalous sound. This was caught on my lapel mic, and the thing I found interesting is that you can hear the guides, the group members, and the voice on their phone app, but this sound is separate from all of them. I will say, part of getting into the whole paranormal investigation thing in the first place was to see if we could experience any of what so many others have claimed, and in this case, despite it being pretty much a cliche at this point, it is kind of cool to finally be able to join those who have said,
"We didn't hear it at the time. No one reacts to it in the moment. I only heard it weeks later while scrubbing through our audio."
You're walking home tonight.
Simple.
Let's say simple or sin?
Sinful.
I had seen it earlier.
I keep hearing the word stop.
Oh, well, and I was over by the door over there. It kept telling me to move quickly and not to be near that door. I don't know why, but that room, yeah.
I was hurt.
Oh. Yeah, like right in that doorway. I don't know if it's still there.
If you go up behind me, there's a light that'll turn on. If you want to do that. house you'd like us to go to?
Now, I'll go as far as saying it sounds like a word, but rather than possibly influence what you hear by giving it my best guess, I'll let you decide for yourself because that's the IFTL difference, baby. Have a suggestion? Let us know what it sounds like to you in the comments below, why not? Here we are, back upstairs on the main floor, where a circle of chairs was set up for a seance. Rico and I used this opportunity to wander around a little on our own and get some IR video with no sound because, using the camera for the first time, we didn't realize connecting the external microphone requires you to also turn it on. Right, moving on. Next, we made our way up to the second story, where our guides held a spirit box session, and again, Rico and I wandered off every and any chance we got, trying to cover as much ground as possible and just really try to get everything we could out of the opportunity, until it was time to ascend one last flight of stairs to our final stop on the tour, the attic. The attic, like the cellar, was the other quote-unquote big bad of the house. While the majority of it is either beautifully restored or renovated as office and event space, the attic is where the haunted house Scooby-Doo vibes really get turned up to 11 with creaking floorboards, a lot of the original walls, piles of antique furnishings, exposed studs, and empty closets. There was a lot of emphasis placed on one specific corner where one of the guides explained there was a very negative energy that she has a history with. But honestly, once she pointed it out and we immediately rushed over to stand in it, there wasn't any sort of vibe or energy that either one of us could pick up. Now, that's not to say that nothing happened at all. You see, this is also where we find our last piece of evidence.
What about father? Who's father?
What I will say here is that unlike what may or may not have been a word in the cellar, this was a sound, a very faint sound, and like the clip from the cellar, I didn't hear this in the moment, only noticing it while scrubbing through long after the fact. What I love about this example is that having been caught in the attic, at first it didn't make sense. Now, why would we pick up the sound of a small child laughing in an old, decrepit attic? We shared what we caught with the paranormal history folks, and I asked if there was a reason why a giggle of all things might be heard in such a seemingly odd part of the house, but was told the attic was actually a nursery at one point in the house's history, so that was a neat bit of context to have revealed after the fact. Could it perhaps have been an encounter with the same ghostly child mentioned in that Niagara This Week article? Yet another nugget I was not aware of until the writing and researching of this script several months after the fact. And there we have it. Everything that happened, or didn't happen, during our first ever investigation of a quote-unquote haunted house. Now, am I convinced this place is legit? Not entirely. Maybe that puts me in the same camp as our Sue Patterson. While we didn't experience anything definitive, the sounds I picked up are at least enough to make me scratch my head and be at a loss for an explanation. And in a way, I think that almost makes it cooler. Isn't the whole point of this to hope you encounter things you can't immediately explain away? If you're watching this, first, let me be clear that it was never our intention to turn the phrase after the fact into a drinking game. More to the point, maybe you're here because you've had an experience yourself that you still can't wrap your head around completely, or perhaps because you know someone who has and you wonder how you would have reacted in their place. I think that's a big part of why we're throwing our hats into this world. We both grew up hearing secondhand stories of what other people heard and saw, and I'm thrilled to even have caught what we did, if only for being able to count ourselves among all those investigators who came before us and, quote, didn't notice anything unusual until reviewing the footage later. A huge thanks not only to the Paranormal and Historical Association of Niagara for hosting the event, but to you for taking the time to check out this video, and we really appreciate it. We learned a lot, not the least of which was how to use our gear incorrectly, so expect marginally better videos going forward? Again? Stick around, find out. Until then, give us a like and follow everything Ben and Rico on Instagram at iftl.pod and on our desperately in need of updating website at ifoughthelore.net. And of course, the I Fought the Lore podcast on Spotify or wherever great podcasts are found. Season 3 is coming. Eventually, we promise. Okay, bye!